Okay, we are recording again. I think you're on mute, Alan.
I certainly was. Okay. Do we have our video shares and stuff turned on?
Just one moment.
Okay. I can see you there. I can see myself in the small window. And you've put yourself into cyberspace there again.
Do we have video feeds from David?
Hey, I don't know if you can see me down here.
We can.
Yep, awesome. We're getting it there now.
Hey, Sharon.
Hi.
So we're just waiting on Roisin.
Yeah,
we've got a presenter, so yep.
I'm here. Can you see me?
Can't see you.
Okay.
No, you need to give that cam a bit of a kick. Awesome. Okay, so will we kick off, Sharon?
Yep, go for it.
Great stuff. Okay, so everybody right now, you know, we're in this virtual strange Netherland thing, and it's because of the wonderful COVID, Corona, whatever we call it. And so long as we're not off trying to inject light into our veins and flush ourselves out with disinfectant, we should get through this time. One of the things that has emerged from this particular situation is that a lot of folk have pulled together and used their skills and knowledge and indeed experience of cat herding to bring huge amounts of people together to do stuff for good, which is tech for good. And it's primarily at the moment focused on COVID. We've certainly seen it over the years focused on other things, but right now I think we're seeing an absolutely unprecedented focus all around the world with folk who are in tech, in all areas of tech, not just the coders, the developers, the engineers, but everybody involved in every aspect of it who can help out to try and alleviate, you know, pain and suffering around the world. And I became aware of the OSV, or the Open Source Ventilator project, a couple of weeks ago and was very impressed by it. It seems to have grown as a grassroots organization from a standing start into thousands of individuals who have kind of taken over Slack at this stage. And I reached out to Roisin and David to ask would they mind coming on and giving us a brief background into the project itself, you know, what they're doing. We know why they're doing it, but, you know, things like motivation, how the community is working, how they're ramping up so quickly, how do they manage that type of group so much? Because that's a huge tech feat in itself, you know, that's the cat herding part. And then, of course, there's all of the innovation that's going on, which is, to me, it's frightfully interesting. So what we'll do maybe is, first of all, if Roisin, you could introduce yourself and a bit about your background. I know that you are well into the doctor stakes. I'm still chasing my PhD dreams, so I'll defer to your brilliance. And then perhaps when you're finished, David, you might come in and tell us something about yourself, and then we'll start to run through some general questions and try and let people know what's going on. So Roisin, over to you.
Great. Hi, everyone. Thanks a million for having me. You can see me okay, can you?
Yes, coming through great.
Perfect. Okay, so yeah, my name's Roisin. I am an assistant professor in entrepreneurship and innovation in Dublin City University, and my research focuses on kind of entrepreneurial teams and innovation. So when David and Colin and Conal started Open Source Volunteers, or as it started, Open Source Ventilator Project, and they got such a huge body of people to sign up, as you'll hear more about. They asked me would I jump on and help as well, and so I started to work on the extended version of the project, which looked at non-ventilator projects, and we have about 30 projects ongoing at the moment, all through open source innovation and collaboration with different people. So that's where I'm coming from, a real passion for innovation, for teamwork, and this is the first time where theory meets practice meets the fire, and we're trying to put it in motion.
Awesome. David?
Yeah, so as you can tell, Roisin took all the slack, and I have the easy job because I have only really one project to work on, it's been brilliant. Myself and Roisin actually, I'd helped out at. Roisin had run 5 hackathons in 5 days with DCU the week before this all started. I'd been there on the Thursday. I think it was the last hackathon, because on the Friday everything shut down. And we didn't realize at the time we were helping students to try and look at, cool solutions to challenges in the world. And we didn't realize that we'd be doing the very same thing as they were doing, over the coming weeks, trying to figure out what was going on. So it was really, like Roisin was saying, putting things into practice that we've been talking about with students for so long. And my background is working with the rehab group. So I'm an innovation manager there, looking at new technologies and supports for people with disabilities to live more independently. I wouldn't call myself a techie as such, but I do love technology. So I'm coming in from the fluffy side of tech is probably where it's best suited. And in terms of OSV, Colin had some conversations on some forums, and came to us, and we were chatting along with Conal, and we said, well, look, we're well suited as a group to support. I'm coming in from a community building side of things, running Startup Week Dublin. Colin as an engineer up in UCD, and Conal working in IoT with WIA, an IoT startup in Dublin as well. So we kind of had conversations there. And then, as Roisin said, that expanded not only from the initial kind of field emergency ventilator project, but out into the extended projects as well, with Jill Barry and Roisin really pushing those ahead, and it was incredible to watch. It's kind of one of those things where sometimes you just have to stand back and get out of the way of people, because it's incredible to see the work that's been done on a community basis.
Indeed, I know even our virtual conference today, I was the silly person who had the idea, hey, let's do this and pull it together. And the same as yourself, David, I've been absolutely amazed by the way our own tech community has pulled together and swung this entire thing. I'm kind of sitting back most of the day here, and everybody's doing all the hard work. It's absolutely awesome. So it's great when the power of community joins in. Roisin, could you tell us maybe a little bit about the different projects that are there? Because we know it started out with trying to get an open source ventilator, and not only are the challenges of trying to actually, design one or copy a design and get that into a working state. But then on top of that, things that I didn't even think about, such as the legal and medical aspect of it. You had to get that, approved, and it has to go through certain standards. How in the name of goodness did you accelerate all this across all these different projects? So maybe give us an overview of the different projects there are, and then tell us some of the challenges that you might have faced.
Absolutely. So like that, I mean, David and their group were brilliant at growing the community, and when they started to put the message out, please help us come up with some new engineering innovative ideas to do with the ventilator. I don't know if they even knew their own reach, and I think there's like 4,000 people that have crossed through the Slack communities at this stage. It was just incredible. I think we're in a community of tech people and innovators and engineers that when we try to think of a way we can help, we log on to the internet and we try and find, is there a group or a community or a need? And that's what lots of people did. But while a lot of people were working on the ventilator, it was getting quite noisy. And so we tried to refocus and reposition people onto other projects. So many of them came in. I was trying to manage, I guess, expectations and manage, you know, how many, because so many were being proposed. I needed to put the brakes on a couple of them in order to get some kind of clarity. Different things that have emerged. Obviously, the face shield design is a big one. Face mask alternatives is a big one. We're looking at non-contact thermometers and face strips that can be used. Then other things that you would never have thought about. So one of the ones that I think is really interesting is decontaminating floor trays. So essentially, the virus is being spread in hospitals as the wheels of trolleys and hospital trays are being rolled around. And so a group of people started working on a 3D printed fixture that you could put on the top of the wheel and would start to channel some disinfectant as it goes through. So the simplest ideas came along, and they came because we talked to some frontline staff about their needs. They started to tell us about the way that if you are working with people with disabilities or intellectual disabilities, they might need different types of face shields, they might need different securities, different levels of Velcro for the different PPE materials that they needed. So it started to spur on. We have about 30 projects. I'm going to say 30 because one day I had to take a day to do my real job, and when I came back to the Slack channel, there was 20 new channels, 20 new groups that formed. So while Mom was away, lots of people went mad, but I have condensed it down again because we don't want to dilute the effect. We want to keep the momentum going. And you asked about how we're getting it through the legal and the different channels, and I wrote down the word to remind myself, not gracefully, is our answer. We have tried our best to keep a very rigid and you know, quality assured method in the way that we're going about things. It's really important that we are dealing with speed and we are dealing with urgency, but we are also thinking that some of these plans we want to make sustainable and we want to keep them going beyond this crisis and stretching into the next one, you know, and create enterprises and different initiatives from this. So while some of our projects have been able to jump ahead because there's been testing in different countries, or we've been able to get them validated in some of the universities that have closed in Ireland, we've been able to get into the labs and get things tested really quickly. Some of the projects have moved outside of our channel and are being manufactured by different companies that are taking on the kind of responsibility from that. We have to say the channels that we've worked with in Ireland have been great, and they have really ramped up their communication and have reached out to us to get different things checked. But there's been a lot of learning. Even for myself, I think I've learned maybe 250 new acronyms in the last couple of weeks. So, yeah, we're moving at the speed of light. We're making mistakes, but thankfully there's enough people in our community to be able to help us when we need to go back a step and rectify those as well.
You said there that, you know, you went away and when you came back there was, you know, 20 new channels and proposed projects, etc., and you pruned those back. From a sort of a project management point of view, how did you decide what to prioritize and how to get those folk back, sort of, I'm not going to say in line, but how to get them back on track without kind of, you know, knocking off the edge of their enthusiasm, etc., and to harness that goodness that's out there without people feeling, you know, knocked back, as it were?
Yeah, it's tricky. I guess what we've been really focused on is momentum. And, you know, while a lot of people can register for a Slack community or for a voluntary initiative, you know, not all of them are active all of the time. So you need to gain a certain level of momentum before I'll approve a channel. and it needs to have like a project brief, and it needs to have maybe 4 or 5 people kind of bought into the idea before it graduates to its own channel. Because otherwise you're going to have many projects that are just getting off the grounds and none that are getting through the process. You have to keep that momentum going. Equally, if you have a project that is getting an awful lot of traction, and lots of people are kind of going off on their own tangents, that's a time where you need to nearly break that apart and say, that sounds brilliant. You work over here on the, say, high spec project for Ireland. You guys come over here and look at maybe a cheaper, more versatile alternative for a low resource context. You know, so yeah, there is a little bit of energy detection. Now, I mean, pulling from my own experience of dealing with like 600 students in teams, I've found that my teaching has really helped to detect kind of areas of frustration and needs to supplement. We do have a lot of mentorship as well, and sometimes in order to kind of spearhead a project, getting them to have a separate Zoom call with an expert can really help to kind of build that momentum back up again.
Yeah, mentorship is really important. As you were talking there, it struck me that there's a lot of parallels in the way you were talking about how you identified things and tried to keep a structure on their quality as they progress through the different stages with the Apache Foundation. And how the open source works there according to very specific tracks, and there's got to be a sponsor to bring something in, and then it's got to be voted up, and then it becomes into an incubator, and then once it goes through that, it moves to the next stage, and then it graduates, and yada yada. So it seems like you've almost found that naturally and accelerated, which was pretty awesome. I wonder, where is the assistance that you're getting? Where is that coming from? Is it predominantly makers? Is it tech folk? Is it the frontline? Where's the David? Where's the people coming from that are actually doing this? What are their kind of backgrounds and stuff?
Yeah, it's been really fascinating to see, because I genuinely can say everybody. It's been one of those things where people are finding their value within it, and also we're seeing that it does take a community of people to push things ahead. So it's been wonderful to have support from people who are developers and designers within certain spaces. But what we're also seeing is the value of having that validation from frontline staff as well, who maybe, you know, can't create or develop these things themselves, but they know what's needed. They know the challenges that people are facing. And I think that's always been the key focus for all of the projects. And keeping in mind that, you know, we don't want to do any harm. We want to be safe at the kind of core of this. And, you know, talking to people, validating it no matter where they're coming in from, that's the key, because people are coming in from such different lenses and perspectives that they hit you with something in the face that's so obvious, but that because you're just stuck in the weeds, that you just can't see it any other way. And so obviously, you know, with different projects, different people come to the fore. Engineers are just, you know, it's awesome to see it. We've got the developers running some of the online platforms that people are being supported on around personal protective equipment and those areas. And yet then we also have Merv, who I'm sure Roisin will talk about in a little bit as well, with a 550 bikers going around Ireland delivering personal protective equipment, which, you know, is just incredible to see. And they've come through the OSVX program and are doing some amazing stuff. So really, what we're seeing is, and obviously the maker community, look, we'd be lost without them, given their insights into the different elements of, you know, design and iterations, and coming to us, you know, after working overnight on a project, you know, maybe around a ventilator design or whatever it might be, saying, hey, have a look at this, and we're just waking up going, how did you even do that in the time frame given to us? And they're like, give us your feedback, and we're trying to get our copies in as we're looking through it, trying to understand things that we didn't understand 2 weeks ago.
So David, knowing that you're on a technical channel, and we're an extremely large and communicative technical community, and incredibly generous with our time, certainly at the moment, there's a lot of us taking community calls and helping people out of hours, etc. Do you have any particular asks? Are there any things that you're stuck with that you'd like the community to jump in on?
Well, what I'd say is, like, we're always open to people supporting us. I think it'd be incredible to get people's feedback on the projects and their current state. All of the designs are open source, so even for the ventilator projects that are there, everything is up on GitLab, so people can go in and have a look. That's my best recommendation, is go in and see what's going on, try and get familiar with some of the elements of it, and go, well, actually, there's something that I can support on, and pop into the Slack channels. They're open as well, so you can do that through teamosv.com, and through there, we'll be able to push you into the different groups that you are interested in and supporting with as well. So really, everything is there. It's open. So if you can support in any way, we'd be more than happy to get you on some of those teams. Yeah, that's the OSV extended one, and it is a bit crazy in there. I think in the general, what's that, 1,300 people, and that's one of the Slack channels. So if you're brave enough, if you're up for a challenge, and you feel like, you know, you haven't got much more to do this weekend other than, you know, coming on here and watching the Global Azure conference, or even afterwards next week, this might be a nice place to test out some of those skills.
Absolutely. I mean, it's actually phenomenal. As I click through here, there's, you know, 681 group. There's over 1,500 in another group. They all actually seem to be no less than about 650 or so. I mean, that's phenomenal in an open source group. And in addition, there's one that's 760. In addition, they're also active.
Yep, and I think one of the things that you'll find is, even with different groups and at different stages, you know, there will be drop-offs of people, and some people who, you know, find it that they finally get to a stage where they're like, okay, well, I think I've given what I can here. But I think at that point, then it's all about management, and, you know, people give what they can, and it's trying not to stretch people, because we also have a bit of I suppose, an ethical responsibility as well. You know, that these people probably have families and livelihoods, and are trying to balance all of that as well as give. So that's one of the areas that we really want to try and support as well, and make sure that people are looking after themselves too.
Yeah.
So other than, sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, just to add on to that point, like, because I think this would be a great time to reach out to your community, because at the moment we have a lot of different information and we have a lot of resources, and it's data scientists and people with technical know-how that might be able to convert a lot of that chatter and a lot of that, you know, information and insight, and make kind of interesting models or interesting visualizations from some of that. So if anyone was willing to put that to the test, we'd love it. We've seen a lot of our outreach programs, like the bikers, and some really interesting models around face shield depots and things that were great initiatives. But then when they had some really good back-end systems organizing and validating the process and doing some kind of tracing systems, that was when they became robust concepts and kind of spin-out organizations. So I think any data scientists out there, and anyone that likes kind of back-end web developing and stuff, we definitely could add a team of those to each channel to see what else could be done.
We certainly have a lot of those in our community, and we have Claire on chat offering to help you with that. So if you could get us some links there in the chat window, we have a lot of data people. We've got some fantastic MVPs, certainly in the UK and Ireland, that can help you. And even if that's just advising and pointing you to the right people to talk to, we'd love to help.
As an example, just from today, we're trying to figure out what nursing homes, retirement centres and different home care centres, not necessarily the hospitals, but just the centres, what they need. We have a very basic form that's gone out to them, you know, trying to figure out who needs what, where, when, how, why, and how to distribute what we get in as voluntary donations. We're a non-profit, so we just try and get the stuff that we have out to people. But an idea came up about, is there any way of having some prediction modeling for, the different centres that would need this at different times, maybe factored into the R0 or factored into the urban rural kind of areas, and those kinds of projects, not to undersell it, they save lives if they're done correctly. So yeah, so
we've got a lot of experts around that. So
there you go.
We'll get Microsoft to reach out and help you on that one.
Yeah. There's another group, just to touch on it there. There was a group that I was hoping were going to be able to join us today, but unfortunately they weren't around. And it's the 3D crowd. They just called it 3dcrowd.co.uk. And as far as I've known, there's something like over 5,000 3D printer owners now across the UK who are daily going through reams and reams of PV, whatever they use, to print off, everything for the bits from PVA, the bits of face masks and everything else, and that's really amazing. One of the things that I'm wondering about is, you talk there about having the great feedback, which is so critically important with your customers, because your customers are the frontline staff, right?
Yeah.
How did you get contact with those folk initially, and how do you maintain that dialogue, and how do you know how to get to the right people to give you the feedback about whether, number one, an idea is going to work, or number two, what they actually want, and to be able to link the ideas of the kind of wants and needs with the people you have in your team, etc. How do you manage that?
I mean, I suppose we're lucky in the sense that Ireland is a small community, and so everyone knows someone that can test a model for us. So we started in quite small prototyping channels where you would literally have a design, have an idea, you'd put it up on the Slack channel, and before everyone would finish weighing in, you would have it printed and you'd be trying it out. Then some of our frontline staff would weigh in and say, okay, let's jump on a Zoom call, turn it around, show it to me, and then post it to me. And so this was our first step of our biker community, was literally moving prototypes and tests to one another, and to the different testing facilities to check how robust they were. That's where we started, and I think we're still in those kind of small testing circles, and then bringing it back to the channel.
Very good, very good. I noticed that I'm going to do a quick screen share here again, just to show some metrics that those guys have. If I can find the right screen, here we go. And over there on the 3D crowd, they're showing some incredible figures. They got 600,000 face shields requested. They've got 80,000 in production. Last week, they delivered just short of 40,000 to the NHS. What kind of numbers are you guys pushing out, do you think, in relation to standard personal protective equipment?
So in terms of the face shield, we are kind of collaborating with all of the big players. We wouldn't say that, while they are OSVX members, we wouldn't claim that they are our initiatives, but we would definitely be promoting them, and we've discussed their items with them. The bench space model was working very well, and I think they're up to about 10,000 every 2 days. And actually the military have come on board and are assisting them in their process. Such a good model was working. And now some of our compatriots, Crescent Engineering up in the north, they're starting to do, and we're hearing figures of about 100,000 a week from now on. So the face shield, in terms of the face shield PPE, we're in a very good position, and actually some of our 3D printing communities are starting to move off face shields and move on to some of our other items. We're effectively almost at a stage where we're closing the face shield channel, or we're moving people to another, which is a great place to be in. And we actually have connected with some of those groups in the UK as well. And we've shared resources and insights on designs. At one stage, we had a Zoom meeting talking about literally the face shield design with about 22 different members across Ireland and the UK. And they were talking about, literal millimeters, and, different regulations, and sharing disclaimer information, and sharing product and suppliers' names, contact details, to try and get as much material to the different groups. So it's been, it's been really, the full ethos of open source has been seen through all of this. In terms of other PPE materials, we're just getting off the ground with our gown manufacturing. in Ireland. And so hopefully next week we'll be printing them in large companies and factories as well. We have 2 different designs in OSVX in motion. One is a kind of very high spec coverall, and then the other one is a more kind of validated model for hospitals and healthcare centers. So we're literally trying to get that manufactured at 2 points on the scale.
Yep, and we're seeing that even within Ireland, that the trend changes as the weeks go on, and they can change day by day as well. You know, sometimes ventilators can seem like the thing to go for, and as things start to move on, we're seeing that, you know, perhaps efforts are better placed in certain areas depending on the country. When we've been fortunate enough to have some direct calls with some of the governments within Latin America and Africa as well, and you can see that, you know, we're almost, you know, in the future compared to where they're going to be, especially during the last 4 weeks or so, as we were having calls, you know, they were only just getting their first cases there. So we were able to advise and I suppose support within that. And what we're noticing is that sometimes, you know, you can need hundreds of thousands of a certain thing one day, and then suddenly realize, well, actually, you know, that's not what we're going to put our focus on, and have to shift within that. But what we've been fortunate enough to have is that automakers and some of the large corporates as well have been supporting and have been given their time to come on calls. So that's been very, I suppose, encouraging as we've been moving forward as well, to have them build in. So they've been using the designs and the development that's been there on the open source channels, making adaptations and shifts, and then putting it forward for their own spaces, whether that's in Mexico, whether it's in Costa Rica, Colombia, or wherever that might be as well. So it's been fascinating to watch, and I'll be honest, it's hard to put figures on things. You know, needs are there, but things change so quickly that honestly, I from my perspective, I don't even know half of the figures that are there. So if someone can go and take a look into that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I do know that Merv, in our biker community, they stopped counting how many deliveries they'd made after 1,000.
Right.
So that was then, I think, yeah. I mean, we are moving quite quickly. I would say, because I know that the tech community that might be watching this are also probably very much in the 3D printing community, some of them as well. And you know, I would hazard a guess that if they are listening to a Tech for Good presentation of a Saturday, they're probably also pressing print on their printers. And it just seems like the Venn diagram of the same people. You know, depending on where they are in the world, they might still have a requirement for that face shield. And so jump on our Slack and see what we think is the best design. We're going with a UK N3P model, and that's the one that we've kind of, you know, we've reached a consensus on. So get some information on that if you'd like, or if you feel like your country or your context is, again, you know, reaching the needs for face shields, have a look at some of.
Ooh, a little delay there.
I think so.
So I'm sure I should come back in. David, it was interesting. You were talking there about the different manufacturers and large companies who are working with you, and the medical device space itself. I know, because I have a bit of a background in sort of medical and healthcare software, and the medical device kind of market space itself is very, very heavy, and it's very patent orientated, and it's very intellectual property driven and everything else. Are you getting any pushback from those organizations in relation to what you're putting out? Or are they actually trying to help out? What's that kind of vibe there going between the open source community and you guys?
Yep, I see Roisin's back there, so I don't know if Roisin has finished her point on that, and then I can jump in on the medical device side.
Sorry, yeah, I dropped out. I'm not sure how much you got of it, but I was giving recommendations for what to move on to next. The last point I would say is we are looking for solutions for lower resource countries, and if you have 3D printing technology, or if you have design skills, maybe start to see what other materials could be used that are cost effective in other contexts, or how could we change our designs so that things would be cheaper to print and manufacture in other countries, or even to ship. That's the type of information we need. We have a lot of extremely and quite frightening urgent needs in other countries, and we're looking at our own country and we're trying to protect our own people, but there's a hell of a lot going on in the world that we need to start thinking about as well.
Yeah, 100%. Just on that, one of the places, like just to give an example, is in Bangladesh in Kutupalong refugee camp. They've got another refugee camp quite close. It's about 8 hours from Cox's Bazar. They've got about 1.1 million people, probably in the space of 12 or 13 square kilometers. They've got about 3 hospitals with about 12 beds each for something like that. But what we're finding is that education and awareness, and the simple things of, how to get clean water, things like that, can be really impactful. We were talking to one of the women running the camp there. So if people, like Roisin said, have design skills as well, and feel they can support, we might feel the urgency starting to loosen a little bit here with media and things like that. But the reality is that this is something that needs people's help. It might not be here, but it's needed. And I think if people are looking for things and are not too sure where to fit in, if they want to even reach out and say, where should we focus on, even in terms of areas, we'd be more than happy to push them in the right direction there. And just in terms of the medical side of things, we found overall people have been very willing to give support, even if it's not from a, I suppose, official side of things. They may not want to put names to things because, people are terrified of lawsuits and, all the things after, once everything kind of calms down, it's a great opportunity for people to sue if they wanted. So what we're finding is people are being very supportive, obviously with those automakers and those, like, they've just been given resources left, right and center working on things. It's been great. We have found that some of the different open source projects are not maybe as open source as they say. And when people start to delve into what actually is being provided, the resources are not there to help people to develop and proceed with those projects. So that's just one thing I would be aware of, even when people are sharing things on media and whatever, that if they could just check those out, and maybe that's something that for your community could do as well in terms of fact checking and elements there is, are people saying what they're actually doing? So it's been really useful to get that message out there to say, look, this is what's going on. And maybe afterwards I can share with you a matrix of the different ventilator projects, for example, that's been broken down into different elements of, is it ready to test? Has it been tested yet? Is it open? And some of the different areas within that as well, to give people an example of some of the matrices that are available there.
That'd be really worth adding to the YouTube feed. And one of the things that we tend to do in our community to get very fast results is to organise hackathons. Have you had any of those yet?
Yeah, well, I suppose not an internal one in the Slack community, and it's something that I've talked about quite a lot, because actually some of our projects have gone very quickly and have achieved quite a lot of success and are now in the spin out or the kind of accelerator area, but then others need a little bit more incubation. So I've actually said we need to have an internal hackathon, but I'm laughing because David and I both jumped off separate hackathons to be at this talk today.
Okay. So that makes sense. No, I mean, we have a group of guys that do Hack for Good, which is very similar to this panel name. And certainly Chris Huntingford, who actually works for Microsoft, is a key player for getting those up and running. And it's always amazing how the community all comes together on the one day. And out of it, you can have maybe 10 different solutions that may or may not be able to proceed further. It's really quite amazing.
Yeah, I think it would be brilliant, and like that we have been doing internal like AMAs and stuff just to try and get everyone focused on something for a specific time. But I do think we will need, soon we will need something like that, both to onboard new members and make them feel kind of connected to the different projects and channels, but also to breathe a bit of new life and create some more.
That actually leads to another question, because with so many people in different groups, how are you maintaining that sense of community for everyone.
I thought you were asking me how am I, which
how are you doing?
I'm not sure.
You can join us for a virtual pint later at about 5:30.
Great. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it is challenging, and I feel like we have put a project manager on each project, and they're trying to generate momentum, but with different time zones and with different urgencies, and I suppose different challenges. Hitting a kind of a brick wall with some projects in terms of validation or quality or materials can really, you can see the fall off of people pretty quick. It's not as illustrious as some of the other projects, or it's not as tangible a value that you're giving. So yeah, it is. We're trying a couple of things. We started to put in webinar series to try and bring people to the channel at the same time. We've done a little bit more of, I think we were very reluctant to pat ourselves on the back and celebrate some of the projects because there was still so much to do. But we realized that now, you do need to validate some of what's going on to generate that sense of community. So we're doing a couple of different things. We're by no means perfect, and it does worry me when I see a couple of people less being active. That's the curve that these things follow, and maybe it's a sense that people are thinking that their governments or their countries or that communities are externally are doing more, and that's good. I would like to have now, we've a lot of engineering projects. I want to see more other projects come on board, and looking at like data science and social science projects, looking at the more long-term effects. And I know David and I speak about the mental health ramifications for people. I think we can move from product to service as well in the community, and hopefully we will.
I'd also like to see, so I have a 15-year-old who is a budding young engineer with a 3D printer, but there is a whole community of people that are between exams at the moment, can't take exams, and kind of have this couple of months off. It'd be really good if we could harness all of that innovation.
Absolutely. And I think we are starting to move from the Slack channel, and now we have Team OSV website, and we're starting to populate that. So if you don't want to swim through the, I was going to say swim through the jungle because my analogies are terrible. If you
swing through the jungle.
You haven't been to Florida then?
No, I haven't. But yeah, if you don't want to try and get through the whole Slack channel to find the right information, this will be your entry point to the website. And then if you like a conversation, you can do it. But one of the things that we would love to try is to kind of have an academy for younger hobbyists or whatever, so that there would be, something that would feel a little bit more like their home in the community. But we are, I guess, 3.5 weeks old, so it might take us another day or two.
Maybe a day or two, very good. But maybe if we've got some education leads or something watching, we can get more people involved.
Honestly, and it's what I've said in the community, and it's what I say in general. Don't come to me with problems, come to me with solutions. You will, if you have something that works and that you can help with and you can lead, you're in. We absolutely we need that kind of energy, and we need that kind of commitment and that kind of innovation.
In terms of the hackathons as well, if people are interested and they want to check them out, even on social media, you'll be able to follow some of the different progress. But there's startup weekends run through the Techstars Accelerator happening throughout the country. So even in Ireland, they're happening this weekend. All of the money is going towards the World Health Organization. There's people working on engineering problems, developing problems, even just some social problems as well to support there. And also, if people are interested, the European Commission are running a hackathon that has 16,000 people in it this weekend, called EU versus Virus. So through Sapien Innovation and ourselves, we were one of the kind of the supporting members of that initially to try and get that up and running, which is massive. And hopefully, even if one or two ideas come out of that, or even there's a spark of something, I think they'll be useful. So if people are interested in running more or getting involved, be more than happy to have conversations around that, because I think there's plenty of space for them. And even in terms of the network and how you build up and knowledge of people in the ecosystem, I think it'd be ideal to get people involved there.
Question
So,
for
Alan,
the
I'm
two
aware-
of you.
Go on.
Sorry. If you were starting this again, what would you do differently?
I'd ask Roisin immediately to get on.
I was going to say I'd turn off my phone. I don't know. I mean,
Everything probably.
yeah, I think there's 100 things we would have done differently, and yet we've seen that stuff has happened, and we've seen that things have worked. So how can you take that back when you see deliveries of, you know, manufactured face shields getting to the people that need them? We even saw, there's a very funny photo of 5 bikers picking flowers in a field for a hospital because they were donated by a greengrocer or something. Yeah, you see all these nice stories and you think, okay, look, we did what we could. I would definitely have learned more about Slack. My first time logging on was kind of starting this community. So I wish I had been a little bit more tech savvy in some elements of community engagement in that way. But I guess it's a lesson that anyone watching this could do what we're doing. You know, we were in a really fortunate opportunity, and I'm absolutely thrilled that David and the guys asked me to be involved, because it feels important and it feels valuable. But I would say anyone here that is watching could have done it probably 3 times better than we could have done. You know, and my kind of message to people is like, stop making sourdough and make something tangible, you know, make something with your technology, because I've seen the power of when some of these guys, these data scientists jump into a project, the speed that they can elevate something from concept to real is incredible. So I would urge people, if you have an hour, use your hour.
Yeah,
Sometimes we just need someone to get things started.
Yeah, be ready for plenty of conflict resolution as well. Get comfortable with conflict. That's going to be our book, I think, at the end of this, Roisin. They turned down my I wanted to call it 2 docs and a Dave, but they don't want to go with that, unfortunately. But conflict resolution is an area to be aware of. But yeah, I think overall, one of the positive things for us is that we decided, even though there were other people raising money and funds at an early stage, we decided not to do that. So we haven't raised any money, and we did it all volunteer-led, and we all have our own jobs. But what that allowed us to do is to have conversations with some of the bigger players, and also with communities, because there was none of that extra element of like, oh, well, maybe you're doing this for a financial gain. So that is something that I wouldn't change. Is, it was hard to do it at the time because, people were coming in, some from big accelerators were offering us up to 100,000 or whatever it might be. And we had to say no, which were hard conversations to have with groups, because like, well, you could do so much with that. But actually our focus was on, making sure that what we were doing was community-led and organic and authentic as well. So I think that is one thing that I wouldn't change from this.
Yeah, it definitely did take a lot of, I suppose, the cynicism away from what we were doing. People kind of could see that we were just trying and authentically so.
Okay, we don't have any questions in the chat window, I think, that need addressing, other than Rishi was offering to talk about a D365 project there, which is always useful, so we'll connect you up. But does anybody want to come off mute and ask these guys a question? I think Alan and I could talk to them all day, but does anybody else want to jump in with anything?
Yeah.
I'd say they realized we couldn't answer any of the technical ones, so they're like, we'll leave them to it.
Look, we can try our best. I suppose it's worth saying we are now about to launch a kind of a research project on this community and studying the open source trajectory in the face of a crisis, looking at the different curves of membership in a kind of a time series fashion against the perceived urgency and the different maybe technological advances, or we'll say maybe the information that has been flagged publicly, checking to see if those time points had an effect on the different levels of momentum and conversation in the open source thing. So I'm interested to see where that'll go. I'm running that as part of my innovation research in my university. So be interesting to see how that goes and see if we can leverage some of that for a community group in another crisis, get them to recognize what the different transitions are.
I love the assumption we're having more crises.
A different form of a crisis, you know, but maybe
personal ones.
Hopefully nothing as scaled up. But I think this is, you know, we've put ourselves for a number of reasons in a vulnerable position, and we will never put ourselves in this position again, because, you know, we are starting to be conscious of our crisis management. In my university, there is a crisis management department, and they run an emergency management conference every year. And they've always said that, you know, we do enough, but we could do more, and now we're seeing they're probably right.
We had said earlier, you know, what would you do differently? To flip that in its head, what are some of the learnings that you guys have got from taking an idea from just this ethereal thing and being able to push it up to 4,000 volunteers? What are the learnings that we can take from that to help us to take new ideas, and even things that you were saying, like sort of, you know, AI-based stuff, ML-based stuff, data science-based stuff, that we can go to the more, you know, coder type community that we have on our end and say, guys, this is what we want. This is how we think you need to scale it. You know, how do you see that evolving?
Yeah, but I think that's an interesting one. I suppose what people maybe aren't familiar with or aren't aware of, and hasn't really been pushed too much, is the years of work that have gone into building communities by a lot of the people on the core team. So people who've been running free hackathons, volunteering within spaces, in hacker spaces, at the maker events that are going on, and have built up this element of trust across, and also this idea of cross-pollination, where people have been not just, you know, narrowing themselves into one bracket, but actually saying, well, okay, I'm a maker, but I can also support the startup community, or I can, you know, I'm a developer, but I can also go and support, you know, some of the maybe the charity sectors and things like that. So, you know, this idea that people are valuable in each of the spaces, and that's been going on for such a long time through Colin and Roisin and all those. And what we found is having a core team who are not just an echo chamber that they're going to challenge has been super beneficial. You know, people who are not just, you know, going to agree for the sake of agreeing, who are willing to actually, you know, have a bit of a row, but, you know, we all know that we're going to get over it on the far side of it, has been really, really beneficial in terms of pushing out. Then on the far side of it, that has helped so much, because we have people like Dave Graham and others who Dave is working with Dell, and he's been, you know, there on the Slack channels, acting as an incredible moderator and someone who's picking up on all the different elements, which, you know, we didn't have capacity to do, but Dave did, and that helped to, you know, take away all the little stumbling blocks for people and for the different groups at an early stage, and their learnings that, you know, then were shared into the next groups and could build on that. So Roisin, I don't know if you want to just
Yeah, I mean, I think the best thing that has happened in our group is that nobody joined because they wanted to be a hero. They just wanted to help. And I think there's a big difference between that. They understand that you might be just a cog in a very big kind of, you know, wheel, and that's enough. And I think, you know, the tech community are a great kind of example of that, because they can see that maybe they're running admin, or maybe they're checking software, or they're doing something that is kind of behind the scenes, but they can see the larger picture and how much that will have an effect, and probably a lot more of an effect than maybe volunteering their time for something else. And so we had, at the very outset, we had a lot of people that recognized that and weren't doing it for the acclaim or the fame or the money or for the anything, because none of that was on the table. And so that, I think that messaging was really important from the start. And I think that's something that we would double down on. If I was to maybe leverage more, or I would ask other people to do if they were creating this again, that initial project idea time, we took insights from frontline staff, but I do wish that at the start we would have had more of a voting system for choosing those projects. You know, and if we had made that platform very user friendly, so that, you know, from the get-go, the minute that you join the community, you already have a tangible thing to do, which is vote on your particular project and why. I think that would have helped with the onboarding process a lot more. People would have felt connected, and we would have been able to downvote and get rid of some of the initial projects that held back some of our teams. So
I'm really seeing a lot of parallels here in what you guys are saying with the way that we run the, you know, our end of the tech business, you know, product voting for features up and down, and bringing groups together, and then disassembling them and bring them up together, and getting priorities up and down, etc., etc. It's quite amazing. So attendees feedback, do we want to get anything there in, Sharon?
Yeah, I mean, so anybody that wants to give us some feedback on this session, please do. Is anybody, we haven't got any more comments there, so no more questions for you, but we would love to start some more conversation around this, because I guess we've got quite a lot that we can do by bringing these two communities together, and I think that's actively something that we can help with in our little way. So again, we could talk all day, but we've got another speaker, which is me, on in 5 minutes. So we do need to wrap the session up.
Yeah, anybody that's interested, I mean, if you log on to teamosv.com, and you can click into any of the Slack channels there and get cracking. Make sure you introduce yourself when you join the channel and tell us a little bit about you, and then one of our admin team will contact you directly and see where you fit. And I think, Alan, seeing as you just told us what a great fit you are, welcome to the team.
Oh, jeez.
Right. He was going to sleep tomorrow.
That's how it works.
Yeah, one of those days. Okay, so I think that I'm just going to share that there for folk. That's the website that Roshan was referring to. So I think, given the fact, Sharon, that you're on next, and in fairness, we've talked for a long time, and also for everybody watching in there, it might be good for us to take a quick comfort break now for maybe 10 minutes. And we'll start. It's now 5:02, so we could start this session back again with Sharon at 5 past. Would that suit you, Sharon?
Yeah, that's absolutely fine.
Okay. From the point of view of Team OSV, thank you very much indeed for your time and coming in. There's some very key people who are listening here on the channel who are very influential. I'm referring to you, Claire, and and we're going to have some offline conversations during the coming week and see what we can do to pull the wider community together to help you guys out, and not just to sort of jump in and say, you know, we'll do this, this, and this, but to actively engage on a project-led basis so we can use our skills where you best need them. We're especially interested in the data science area. We're very strong on that, and also on the back end tech, where you guys need help supporting communications, supporting operations, etc. There's a huge amount of skill on our development community that can help out with that as well. So thank you very much indeed for your time. It's very much appreciated, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks
again. Thank you from everybody for everything you're doing. Well done.
Take care. Thanks. Everybody else, we'll see you at about 5 to 7 minutes past the hour.
I'll just pop up the holding slide.
Thank you very much.
Hi everyone, thank you for staying with us and welcome to the Global Azure Virtual. If you've only just joined us, I'm Sharon Sumner and I'll be beginning my session shortly. Just going to do a little housekeeping and stop and restart the recording so that we don't